AZOPALIX, Day 7. Date stamp May 5, 2026. And I have a flurry of insights I want to document from the cosmic to the microcosmic, all the way hopefully back to the practical and the current. But I'm reacting to a bunch of new videos coming out about, the precise science of how life began and how the cosmos expanded and all this materialist information. I'm talking about the three meta narratives. This is serious. I think it makes a lot of sense, and it helps us pull things together here because we're still, most people are finger pointing. Oh my God. And we are at a place where everybody's freaking out. And events are also kind of cascading and picking up momentum. Hopefully we're at the end of this conflict with Iran, but that's just the beginning of a whole series of things. And it's accelerated. Personally, I don't want to get into that one way or another. I think it's going to be over soon. That way, let's not get sideways on this. Things are moving forward. Trump's making things happen. So at least you got to say that. So many people with Trump arrangements in. Okay, that's why I didn't want to get into this. And we're past all that, but I am hopefully bringing it back to what we're doing, okay, kids on the ground. But here's the insight. The material light, the science, and it's related to this. Trump and the whole right wing is about businesses doing things for real and keeping track of the books and what it takes to make something happen and the money and all the seriousness of, none of this hoopla, la-di-da. I talk community and festivals and all this. And I'm saying, yeah, because that's what we're really kind of doing. And then, then we go off and do work that brings, hopefully, to enhance what? Our lives, right? Which are about the things that are worth living for. And yet, so is it the aggressiveness of competition that makes us get all serious about things that are gnarly and difficult to do and require a lot of focus and seriousness, and that's now they have weapons. The happy people don't have weapons, man. I'm talking about weapons. Industrial machinery makes us all feel like we have nothing to say about all the stuff we need and use all the time. Didn't used to be like that. We used to know exactly pretty much what it was we had, but it wasn't all that much. You see what I mean? It was less. If you're in one of these travel situations. But I mean, the left-right thing, I'm kind of referring our current society to all the possible societies we could have, because I'm saying we're going to a place of potential utopian resolution of some things that, even though they look enchanting, weren't really all there, because a lot of these other societies, let's say for example, I'm just thinking right now, the Aztecs, forget the stuff they were sacrificing people. That's how weird things can get at the metaphysical, especially when you're feeling it. But we're in a place with this new science. It's new. The science we have transcends cultures. As far as it's getting captured by money. There's the same way that a lot of good intentions are captured by an abstract greediness, as opposed to one in the context of who your people really are. You people wouldn't let you get away with, it's like going to a potluck and taking all the food. It's like, what the fuck, dude? Hey. All right, but that's another aside. There's so many asides. I was trying to relate to the fact that from the science of it, we have fine-tuned information about how evolution actually works. And that seems like a conflict with all the spirit schools. And yet I'm coming on like the spirit schools are for real. You got to take them all seriously, including the focused intentionality. You can take that as the abstract principle of the Jehovite school. There's the focused intentionality, but that says, this is what's going on. We're going to come to a resolution. This is meant to happen this way. And then you have the question, well, if it was meant to happen, why'd you make it so painful and such? My response to that is that the material plane has integrity of its own, even though there might be some intentionality at a frequency of information that does affect things, and that's where how it looks like magic. And then you have the Buddhite school or the spirit. I'm just shouting. I don't need to shout. The Buddhite school is the idea. I'm calling it Buddhite, Materialite, and Jehovahite. And what I was amazed at is how the Materialite has really fine-tuned its understanding in such a way that no culture was ever going to get to without hard science. And we have to face and acknowledge that, especially from the left that wants to basically attack business and get to a socialist perspective of everybody gets equal amounts. There was never amounts to parse up before we had mass industrial production. And now we understand there's like pitfalls to that. Yeah. Because every focused intentionality has blowback. That doesn't mean we're not doing it. Evolution is focused intentionality, now we find out, at the epigenetic scale. And now that makes it hard science. And you start wondering once again, is spirit necessary anymore? Huh. Yeah. Quantum physics brings you back to spirit. This is the craziness of it. When you start pushing the actual information on the materialite scale, in the materialite perspective of hard science, it does bring you back to a place of, well, what is all this energy actually? What is it in reality? What is it in reality? Because we're talking reality. People talking about this whole thing is conjured up. What the hell? I can always forget that word because it's so stupid. This is all like some illusion? No, man. It's experientially real, factual to you. And that's part of the reality quantum's finally understanding, even though they can't put words to it. And I didn't want to get off 15 minutes into the metaphysics. But here's the thing about how from the focus intentionality dimension of spirit, it's all meant to be perfect and make sense. And people talk about that, even though there's all this pain, and they wonder what the hell is all this pain. I say, yeah, that's because we all have been granted free will. No, free will is part of the mix of coming into being. But that doesn't mean that somebody doesn't get there first and then start pushing you around before you even get to know who you are. That's where free will comes up short sometimes. So there's a lot of things that are intrinsic to the nature of reality. That's what the Buddhites that are spiritual and meaningful. That's what the spirit schools of Buddhites suggest. And they're saying we're going to have an ascension to a higher civilization as a natural course. And yet here's the Jehovites saying, well, no, there's some specialness going on here on Earth. And even from the 5D people, including myself, who say, yeah, there's some other cultures out there. And this is well into the whole era of civilizations. And we're kind of late into it. And why is it so? If it was going to be perfect, because it was never going to be perfect. I mean, it's always going to be perfect, but it has to evolve. And what does perfect mean? Perfect means flowing with a complex of relationships, and involves the current moment of somebody being awake to being the ninja zen flower of that's perfect. And perfect is how all of nature knows exactly what to do. And perfect is how all the molecules, before it even became planets or suns, somehow knew exactly what to do to come to a place where we're able to sit here and talk about it. Like, yeah, we meant it all. That's what we meant. Yeah, that's exactly what we meant. What? All right. First of all, no matter what school you come from, even if you're a pure materialite, you have to be amazed at the amazingness of it. All right. People look for synchronicities, but every split second, split it as fine as you like. Every moment is constant amazingness at the fine microcosmic, full to the cosmic, to have you even understand what I'm saying right now. That's a synchronicity beyond all of them. Your own body is working synchronistically constantly to have you even be able to get up and breathe. Because the materialites can parse it all out and understand each micro bit of it. That's amazing. But they lose track of the fact, hey man, what you're actually talking about is all of this is going on at once and never stopped for a split second. Even though you stop it in the laboratory and look at it in a fine-tuned way, and it seems like, yeah, it's just somebody built, and I'm going to, hey, Jehovah's, somebody building this one thing at a time because it makes sense. You're both schools, both the Jehovites, they got into a mental space with all of this. And the Buddhites are all like, don't worry about it. It's all natural. Yeah, but it makes sense to understand it. Otherwise, it's going to hit you in the face every time. They got good advice for what to do with your consciousness. The material plane thing, get back to that. Look, there's been a nonstop, constant, amazing flow of full energy, and all of it's informed somehow to bring us to this perfect place. The highest version of Buddhite, I wanted to get this in, is what I call Dzogchen. It's called Dzogchen from pre-Buddhist Tibetan Bonpo. They suggest it's at least 8,000, and somebody else from 30-something thousand dropped hints of it, perhaps, or even the whole thing. And Dzogchen means the great perfection. There's a place where you can get with your own personal consciousness, and you get it, and everything falls into place. Like, I see it, I get it. It comes together. You can explain this from physics as quantum entanglement from the very first Big Bang, and everything is quantum entangled. And yet, how does it become meaningful? And how does the meaningness resolve? That's layered intentionality, which starts out intrinsic from just vitality pursuing its bliss. But it doesn't do that abstractly. It does it from presence. But the presencing is personal. And you may have an abstract potentiality of presencing, but until it comes into a pack, and I had a glimpse of that, okay, where you're just there, but not quite. And then, whoops, where was I? And at a certain point, I saw it as a real thing, but I'm getting so abstract. In physics, you can imagine a three-sided orbit or a three-sided coming apart, because they got the two-side coming apart and then coming back together. But a three-sided one, if it doesn't come back together, it turns into an orbit. All right. From the quantum burbles of everything happening and going away, one of them doesn't go away. All right, there. You have a point of of presencing energy that's in one place. From there, I saw this as I asked the question, what is the cornerstone of the material plane? Actually, I just said, where does the material plane come from? The very question reformulated as, what is the cornerstone of the material plane, and answered that as this. A three-sided paradox is the cornerstone of the material plane, and it was an orbit that went into three ways. As I say, you go out, and when you come back, unless it's perfectly synchronized, two of them come closer, and that repels. Boom. It still goes back to a point of consciousness, goes back to a Big Bang, and my point is that it's never stopped. Since that moment, every manifestation of it, in the infinity of it, but it includes you being in one spot listening to me right now, which brings it back to how the above so below, all the way to that level. And now we're at a place where we've been separated by our own physics. Somebody just contacted me. We've been by our economy, and it's what it took to understand it at this microcosmic level. Now we're all separate as individuals, which is part of what is real, because we came from a setting of tribe. And yet, the three-sided paradox of that, our own personal integrity, the integrity of the tribe, and then the integrity of the wholeness, and how without any of it, none of it works. Yeah, I got slightly thrown off, and I only have a minute left. We need to find a way to make it logical on the practical economic level directly. Instead of right now, we're reinforcing all the separateness that we've come to understand from a reductionist science. There's no surprise there. But the cultures we have that bring us back to community are not reinforced by the economy, which now follows the reductionist science. But the same way there's a higher physics understanding that brings it to quantum, there's a higher economic understanding that brings it to the logic of relationships, and these can be quantified and made practical. And you start with the way businesses interact, and it's all bringing it back to resources, and you become members of the ones that are relevant by, at this point, just buying the product. Essentially, eventually that becomes a co-op membership of some kind, or a system of credits and networks. And I'm going to have to take another one and make this more explicit. And I also didn't flesh out some of those points, but all this comes together in the livity of nowness that includes your presence as part of the center of it. At the same time, we're equal, and yet it's all one. Infinity equals one equals zero, in a way.